Shy Bro, Father James with Father Hank
Hey.
and Kevin.
Hey-o.
It's been a while. Sorry, folks. We were absent for a couple weeks. Father
Wow.
Hank was busy doing paper mache,
Paper mache.
doing dying Easter eggs. So Father Hank had the idea for our fraternal group with Father Derek and Father Tim Anestis over at Mary's Seat, that we read a book once every month. And it was Father Hank's turn to pick. And what was your book choice?
I picked Endurance by Ernest. No, it wasn't from. Who wrote it?
Yeah.
It's about Ernest Shackleton.
Some
but
book
he
about-
didn't write it, though.
Yeah, Alfred something.
Yes, was the biographer of it. It's also on Audible, too. But anyway, the important part is the story of it.
And we both preached homilies on it
We
recently.
did, yeah. And
actually.
Father Tim did as well, too.
So Kevin heard our homily, or
Yeah.
at least my homily, so that's his knowledge on the story. But Shackleton's Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition
Nice.
in 1914.
1917.
It ended in 1917,
Yes.
right? They started in 1914.
Oh, yeah.
3 years, right?
Oh, wow.
Because they get back right before the end of the
Right.
First World War. They were to be the first explorers to walk across the continent. Antarctica had been discovered before, but no one had walked across it.
That's right, yep.
And so this tells the harrowing adventure. It's a mission that failed because the ship didn't make it to Antarctica, got stuck in ice, and then they had to abandon the ship. And they all survive. Not to spoil the story, but I just did.
But in a very surprising way. And
Yeah.
rather shocking, too.
So what was your homily?
My homily, I tied it in with the Good Shepherd. Ernest Shackleton, he was a shepherd. But there was a mystical moment that three of the men had as they were crossing over their last trek. So the last trek was it the Georgia Island, southern Georgia Island? And this portion of their trip or rescue mission was the last chance to reach civilization. So on the southern Georgia Island was the last whaling station around, I believe. But so Ernest Shackleton and two other men, they left behind the 22 on another island, Elephant Island, and they crossed over to southern Georgia Island. So they on this last trek, it was about a day and a half trip over snow, mountains, cliffs. It was uncharted, so they weren't really equipped for it, and they were starving, and their clothes also were really cold. So just an arduous journey. And in one of the moments of when they finally get to the whaling station, the next morning after a hot breakfast, they kind of recall with fuzzy memory of just what the last 36 hours were. And one of the men recalls that it felt like a fourth man was with them, even though they were only three. And Shackleton also felt similarly. So that mystical experience I pointed to as being Christ with them, the Good Shepherd. And Shackleton was also a good shepherd to his men. Even though the journey was done and kind of spent when they lost their ship, he still wanted to go the distance. And when that failed, his last priority was to save his men too.
Yeah, he was very much a father in that way. That's kind of what I tied into a couple weeks ago. There's the attempted mutiny by McNish on the early part of the journey, and McNish doesn't want to go any further, and Shackleton convinces him to, because McNish just wants to sit in the ice and die, basically, right?
Yeah.
And Shackleton convinces him to go on. He lays out the scenario very clearly. We have to abandon ship. Yeah, the mission's abandoned, but you're still bound to obey me.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's painful to obey, it's still to our benefit, obviously. So Christ's commands for us might be painful, but they're going to lead to life. If we just sit down and do what we want, we're going to die.
Yeah. And it's cool, too, to think that there's that beautiful line in Scripture that Jesus learned obedience through suffering.
Mm.
And there's that call when we're in suffering to obey. But to unpack obey more is to listen, right? That's where the word comes from, the Latin. But to listen to God's voice, to listen to that hope and that reassurance that Christ is with you, and this can be part of your sanctification. And I think that's where Shackleton was really calling his men to something greater. One of the commentators on the story said, for Shackleton, the greatest threat or danger was not crossing the ice. The greatest threat that he had to navigate was how to keep the morale of his men up, how to keep them not to fall into cynicism. I talked about that with Good Shepherd, the wolf of cynicism. So you can, like, all the men could agree that our situation is dire, it's really bad, it's terrible, but are we going to just rest in cynicism, or are we going to persevere?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that because you could definitely apply that either to our society or to the church.
Totally.
We're stuck in ice. We're not going anywhere. Mission's failed. Let's just be cynical and sit down and die. But
Yeah.
you got to plug on. Speaking of endurance, obedience and suffering, Kevin Gregus on his internship. Obedience and suffering.
Oh, great suffering.
Yeah.
Open it up.
So what was his primary motivation for Shackelford, right? Shackleton. What's his primary motivation for doing it? Like, what's like? Obviously, he wants to be the first to do it. Was that like what drove him ultimately?
He was a man of adventure, which seems to put it in short terms, but just a restless soul. He liked being out to challenge himself, to bring his body and mind to that degree of intensity of living and surviving. He just felt more alive and everything kind of firing on in his synapses.
They call it the age of exploration. Remember we did a podcast on who's the guy that climbed?
Oh yeah, the freak climb.
Yeah.
The
what's that movie called?
Yeah, Free Solo.
Free Solo.
Yeah, Alex.
Solo.
It's Alex something.
Yeah,
I don't remember his full name.
Climbs,
Yeah, I've seen that was a wild
in
movie.
Yosemite. Yeah.
Yeah, El Capitan.
El Capitan. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why he did something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for him, it seemed to be like it was there. Like it was, no one had done it. It was there. That was his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because after Shackleton returns, some of his, all of his men return too. Eventually, Shackleton does go back out to do it again, and a lot of the same men follow him too.
But he has a heart attack and dies.
He dies,
He doesn't make it. Right.
But he
Spoiler
just wanted to
alert.
go back out there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. But I think there's something to that with, the free solo, this adventure stuff, right? It's something that is useless of like, why would you do this? It's not really necessary. Either someone already did it or you're not contributing to the good of society. But it's the desire to transcend yourself, to push yourself to beyond the normal, which is something that actually holiness calls us to as well.
Very nice. Well, there you have it. There's also a free YouTube documentary that you could watch. It's like an hour and a half.
Short version.
Yeah. You get to see all the penguins and seals that they eat.
Oh.
The guy that kills all those seals when he goes crazy.
Literally clubbing baby seals. Yikes.
Yeah. It's dark. Anyways, Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage. God bless.
Peace.
Later.